Hello everyone, Helen here. How are you today? I hope you're okay, and I am looking forward to sitting with you while you're busy doing whatever, or just sitting and listening, and I shall chat to you. And as you can see, I'm back in my craft room this week after a couple of weeks of chatting to you from the camper van, and it was lovely. Lots of you really enjoyed our trip to Dumfries and Galloway. So thank you if you let me know that you enjoyed it. And I'm going to come back to that trip in just a moment. Mostly today I am going to be talking about mice and making mice, and a special reason for talking about mice today. And then at the end we'll go and absorb a bit of nature and a bit of nice peaceful piano music. But yes, to come back to the camper van trip, in the second part of that trip, we visited a place called Gatehouse of Fleet, and we went to an old mill that was a sort of exhibition area and that had all sorts of things in it. But one of the things that I shared photos of were 4 little wall hangings that were representing authors that had something to do with that part of Scotland. So they weren't all Scottish authors, but they did have something to do with that part of Scotland. And the wall hangings depicted a scene from a book that this author had written. And I asked you if you knew what they were, and 1 or 2 of you got back to me and said you could maybe know what one of them was, but you weren't really sure about the others. So I thought I would tell you what they were. So the first one, and the one that I think was probably the most obvious, was this picture of Treasure Island. And of course that author is Robert Louis Stevenson. He lived from 1850 to 1894, and he didn't live in Dumfries and Galloway, but he was born in Scotland, but he loved visiting the Galloway coast, and he often visited his father when his father lived in Dumfries. So the second one is this picture of Peter Pan. So you might recognise that one as well. Peter Pan, and of course the author of Peter Pan is J.M. Barrie, who was Scottish, and he was educated in Dumfries. And if you visit Dumfries, you can actually go to the Centre for Children's Literature, where there's a whole section about J.M. Barrie. The next picture, this one here, is depicting Ring of Bright Water, and the author of that was Gavin Maxwell. A slightly controversial character, but he's in this selection because he actually was born not very far from Gatehouse of Fleet, and he's part of a very well-known family in the area, the Maxwells of Monreath. Gavin Maxwell lived from 1914 to 1969. And then the final picture I showed you was of some fish. And if you sort of thought about it a bit more, you would see they were red, and there were 5 of them. So that should tell you that the story is 5 red herrings, and the author of that was Dorothy L. Sayers, who lived from 1893 to 1957. Well, she wasn't Scottish, but she did often come and stay in Gatehouse of Fleet and in Kirkcudbright. And in fact, 5 red herrings is sort of based on her experiences in the artistic communities of those towns. So hopefully some of you enjoyed just a little mini quiz. So now you know the answers if you were wondering. So then, on to mice. So a few podcasts ago, when I was showing you around Perth in Scotland, and where I met up with my lovely friend Margaret, and we went to the Scottish Yarn Wool Producers Showcase, and I showed you some of the things I bought. And one of the things that I bought was a little kit and pattern for making a mouse called Harold Fatmus, and I showed you that. And in the comments after that podcast, one of you, Michelle, who lives in Australia, so hello Michelle, told me that she bought that pattern ages ago and hadn't got around to making it. So when I replied to her comment, I said, oh, well, why don't we make it together? Perhaps we'll start it now and you know, then we can be making it together, encourage each other. So Michelle emailed me and then we just started exchanging photographs of our progress of our mice. Michelle got hers done really quickly and she said it was okay for me to share the photos that she sent. So here is Michelle's beautiful Harold Fatmus, and you can see that it's a Christmassy one, which I think is a brilliant idea. So Michelle had made the Anna and Carlos Christmas stocking last year. It was an Advent make-along and they gave you a little bit of the pattern each day. And so she had some leftovers for that and she thought it would be nice to have a mouse in those colours to match her Christmas stocking. So that's what she used. So it's a DK or 8-ply. What's the other name for DK? Can't remember. Thicker than 4-ply anyway, it's the next one. In the pattern it says you knit the base first flat. And it says in the pattern that you can either sew the base on afterwards, after you've made the body, or you can pick up stitches from round the edge. And Michelle very sensibly chose the option of just sewing the base on afterwards. And then you knit the body in the round and follow the chart to make the beautiful patterns on it. And when Michelle came to sew it together, she said that was really helpful that she sewed it on, because she's actually before she sewed it together she did a bit of fulling just to make the fabric a little bit tighter, and so she did that. And then as she was sewing up the base, you do sew a bit on the nose as well, but there's not really very much space at all. So she slipped a thin cork coaster into the base so that it would sit nice and flat. And I think that there's some weighted pellets in there as well as the stuffing. And yeah, so there we go. So that's really good. It looks absolutely beautiful, and now that makes me want to make a Christmas Harold Fatmus, so I might do that. But anyway, on to my Harold Fatmus. I got mine finished as well. I was using thinner needles and thinner yarn. So the yarn I was using was really quite thin 4-ply. And when I bought it from We County Yarns at the Wool Producers Showcase, it was presented so beautifully, and it was just like a little sweet shop, and you go and pick your different colours. It was just so beautifully presented. And when I came to knit with it, I felt just a little bit disappointed, because I'd been excited to use this yarn, and it's actually quite rough and it's very sticky. In that it sticks to the other yarn very easily, which is good for when you're doing colour work or Fair Isle. But yeah, it wasn't feeling so pleasant, apart from the fact that it was unwashed wool, and so it had a lot of lanolin in it, so it did make your hands feel a little bit moisturised. But mostly I just didn't like the feel of using it. And when I finished my knitting, it had a bit of a loose texture really, and I'm not really a loose knitter. So I remedied that by just doing a bit of going through the fulling process a few times, and agitating it in soapy hot water and then rinsing it in cold water, doing that a few times, and it really improved the look of the fabric, so I was really pleased with that. And it is much softer, so there's nothing wrong with the yarn really. It's just in its raw state it felt a bit kind of rough. Yeah, but oh yes, the sewing up though. Well, I had decided that when I had knitted the base, that I would pick up stitches rather than sew it on at the end. I thought, oh, I'll just pick up the stitches, that won't be so bad. Well, you had to pick up 96 stitches from around the circumference of the base. And so what I did was divide it into 8ths and put stitch markers around the edge. And then I knew that I had to pick up 12 stitches between each of the pairs of stitch markers. Well, it took me absolutely ages. I really regretted doing that. As I wasn't even halfway around, and I was thinking, I wish I'd just left this to sew on at the end. Michelle was very sensible. um, and so apart from the fact it took me ages, when I'd finished it, I didn't like the look of it. It just looked untidy. But I decided just to leave it, and it was after that actually that I did the fulling, and by doing that, by felting it a bit, it actually neatened it up a bit as well. So but of course, with only this small bit hole to sew up at the end on the top of the mouse, well, you can't really get a coaster in to make a flat base, so I didn't do that. But I did put a sack of pellets, weighted pellets, in the base, probably about a third here. So here is my Harold Fatmus, and he's smaller than Michelle's. Michelle's was 6.5 inches tall, or 17 centimetres, but my Harold Fatmus is 6 inches tall, a few centimetres shorter than Michelle's Harold Fatmus, and he's a lot smaller around his waist. He is 33 centimetres around his waist, or 13 inches, whereas Michelle's was 42 centimetres around, or 16.5 inches round. When we were at the show, the Harold Fatmus that they had made up was a lot bigger, and they had it very well filled with weighted pellets. So it would have done very nicely as a doorstop, and I quite like that idea. But yeah, so overall he's rather a quirky looking mouse. He's rather lovely, different to any other mouse that I've made, and I think well, I'm planning to make another one in some Christmas colours, because I do think that'll be nice. And it doesn't matter too much I haven't got a coaster in the bottom, because with the weighted pellets on, he doesn't fall over very easily at all. He stands nice and securely there. So there we go, that's Harold Fatmus. And Michelle actually just recently sent me another photo. She'd made her Harold Fatmus a couple of friends. She'd made a lovely doll using a pattern by Mary Jane's Tea Room. So she's beautiful in her Christmas colours. And she also made the little smaller mouse, which was a free pattern on Ravelry by Amanda Berry. And I shall look for it and leave a link if you fancy making that mouse. But it was having these interactions with Michelle and making our Harold Fatmuses together that made me think, oh, wouldn't it be lovely if all of us had a bit of a make-along together. I've never ever hosted a make-along before, and it might end up a bit embarrassing if only 2 people join in or something, but I'm hoping that a few of you might like to join in. And so the idea is I'm going to have a Mousealong Makealong, so that you can, if you want to join in, just make a mouse that's, or something related to a mouse. Doesn't even have to be a 3-dimensional mouse, but using any craft at all. It can be a knitted one, or crocheted, or a sewn one. It can be embroidery, or a plique, or cross stitch. You can just do a sketch of a mouse, or do a little painting, or what else? Origami, an origami mouse. Absolutely any kind of creation of a mouse at all. Maybe quilting. Maybe you could do a quilt shape which has got a mouse in it. You could quilt around the mouse, or you could just have little pictures of mouse on the fabric that you've put together. Absolutely anything. You can use your imagination, or you can make it as simple as possible. And for anybody who uses Instagram, then I'm going to make a hashtag which will be Mousealong M-A-L at the end, which means make along, just in case you don't know. So Mousealong Mal, and if you just tag your photo of your finished mouse, or even in progress, that would be okay as well, then yeah, just use that hashtag, and then I will hopefully see it. And if you don't use Instagram, that's completely fine. You can just find my email address in the description box below, and email me a photo of your mouse, and tell me if it's a design, if it's a pattern you've used, that just tell me who designed it and what materials you used, or what was your thoughts behind making it, whatever. Or if you are watching this and you have a podcast of your own, maybe you could let your viewers know that I'm doing this Mousealong Makealong, and they might like to join in as well. And you can use the same hashtag Mousealong. And I think because mice generally are fairly small things, but some projects do take a while to make, I'm going to say that let's have a closing date of the end of June. I think we'll make it the 30th of June. Hopefully that's enough time for you to come up with something if you would like to join in. And at some point in the future, after the 30th of June, I'll do a bit of a prize draw and send off, I don't know, 2 or 3 prizes to whoever's names come up. I'll show you that later, and hopefully have some photos to show you. So yeah, please join in. I mean, if only 2 people join in, I'll tell you that as well, but hopefully there'll be more than that. And I'll leave the details of the make along in the description box as well, in case you want to reread it all. And so that should be fun. And so yeah, I've very recently, just in the last few days, acquired another mouse, the one that I've bought from one of my favourite makers on Folksy. So Folksy is a bit like Etsy, but it's the UK version. And yes, so Martine makes, she has a business called Maisie Muffin Rag Dolls, and I have 3 of her dolls. Here's one of them. This is Rosie, who is absolutely gorgeous. Martine makes the most beautiful dolls and clothes, and all at a very affordable price. And if you are looking for a beautifully made doll, then she is the place to go to. And so yes, I love these dolls so much. It's amazing I've only just got 3 actually, but I have got several changes of clothes for them as well. So, and oh yeah, so they are beautiful. Anyway, Martine there's a whole backstory to her dolls. They live somewhere where they all live together, all the dolls live together, and there's lots of stories about them. And so Martine does actually write little storybooks, so you can actually buy storybooks from her as well. So she's my kind of person. And so anyway, so she had been making dolls this size and then slightly smaller ones, and but recently she's branched out, and she decided that living beneath the barn in the village where all the dolls live is a whole load of mice. And so she started making the mice, and of course as soon as I saw that she was doing that, I had to go and buy one. And they're called Little Nippers. And here is my little mouse, absolutely beautiful. She is called Lola Larkspur. I think all the mice are named after herbs possibly, or just wildflowers. Anyway, Larkspur, Lola Larkspur. She's wearing a little dress and her pants, and all removable. So you can, yeah, we've got a little prested on the back of here, and you can take the dress off if you want to. And in fact, Martine has started doing teeny tiny little clothes that you can buy if you want to, dress your mouse in pyjamas. And you can get a little fold out house as well, where there's a little place for the mouse to go to bed, and a wardrobe for the mouse's clothes. So she is absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, if you fancy having a look, Martine is on Folksy, but I'll leave a link in the description box as well, so you can go and find her. Maisie Muffin Rag Dolls. So there we go, Lola Larkspur, and she's actually a similar size to my very first Mousie. It's not the first mouse I ever made, but this Mousie I made when I decided to call my YouTube channel Mousie-makes. I called it that. I have talked about that before. I'm not going to talk about it at length. I talked about it mainly because at one time I just made loads and loads and loads of mice. So that was sort of my thing. I've branched out a bit since then. But yeah, so this is my little Mousie, who's kind of the icon. So I drew a picture of him, and that became my little icon for Mousie-makes podcast. And I have actually written out the pattern for this, and I did have a website, but I decided that I just didn't have time to maintain it and keep updating it and things, so I've actually taken it offline now. But I'm going to see if I can upload the PDF of the pattern onto my Ko-fi account, and if I do manage to do that, I'll link that in the description box. You need to be able to crochet and knit for this at the moment. I always intended making a knitted version. Maybe I will get around to it. But the mouse itself is crocheted and the clothes are knitted. So anyway, so that's Mousie. Similar size to Lola Larkspur. Right, okay. So before we finish, let's go off on a little walk. When I go out for my walks, just locally, then sometimes I am not thinking of anything in particular, and I might just be sort of absorbing the bird song and what have you. But sometimes I really focus on something. And when I was out the other day, I just noticed one particular bud on a plant. And I thought, oh, that's beautiful. I went and had a close look at it. And for the rest of that walk, all I was noticing were buds. So I took some little bits of video and photos of lots of different buds, and I've turned it into a little video with some gentle piano music for you to watch and listen to. So that's where I am going to finish for today, but I have got loads more things to show you and tell you about, but I'll save them for another time. So one thing that I can't wait to show you is the trip that my mum and I have just been on. We went to the English Lake District and had a bit of a focus on Beatrix Potter, I would say, but we had a really lovely time. I just, some of you will have seen photos already that I've put on Instagram, just a little taster of what we got up to when we were there, but I shall make a podcast about that. And also I've made another tutu bear, a sister for Bernard. So Bernard is the bigger one that I use thicker yarn for, and I showed you Bernard a couple of weeks or so ago, and he now has a sister, so I shall look forward to showing you that. And also I've made a bit more of a detailed, well, I suppose a tutorial, and I'm not really into making tutorials, but I would probably call this a tutorial on how I stuff the seamless toys that that I've been making, and that lots of you have been making as well. I know. I love it when you tell me that you've started the donkey or whatever you've been making. That's really nice. So that might be helpful to some of you. Anyway, so that's coming up as well. So all sorts of things. I have been reading one or two little of the stories from one of the vintage books that I showed you a little while ago as well. So yeah, plenty to look forward to. And also quite soon I'm going off in the camper van again for a longer trip. So I don't know, I'm going to try and upload some videos, podcasts for while I'm away, but if I happen to not appear, don't worry about me. It'll just be because I haven't got time to make enough podcasts before I went away. The thing is that I haven't missed a week yet, and so therefore I really don't want to miss out a week, but I know I can if I want to. If I can't fit it in, I can't fit it in. And yeah, anyway, so as not to miss any of my podcasts that I might upload, if you haven't subscribed already, then please do subscribe. It is free, and if you tap on the little bell, that it will notify you each time one of my videos is pops up on YouTube. And yeah, you might give me a like. And yeah, so anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you if you've made comments, and I will see you again soon. And until I do, take great care of yourself, keep nice and busy, and I'll be back soon. Okay then, bye.